In your role as CTO of New York City, you managed 45 CIOs. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the steps you took to really get these CIOs thinking not necessarily as one, but thinking about some of the common challenges and how they might overcome them together?
Yeah, it was really interesting because it was the first ever CTO role in the city of New York. And so if you know New Yorkers at all, they were like, what the heck is your job anyway? And luckily for me, my main role was to promote a culture of innovation in city government. And usually government and innovation don't go together as words. Yes. And so I knew that I couldn't on the ground just instruct every one of the 45 CIOs what to do. Instead, I took a much more thought leadership and cultural leadership approach. So we created a series of events. For example, we did a lightning round. So I realized very soon that the government is full of silos. And the CIOs actually never shared or had a reason to share information, experience, what were they innovating, and in fact, a solution in one agency might well be the solution for another agency. So we created this series of lightning rounds, they're like lightning talks. So I would invite 6 CIOs at a time to speak for 10 minutes about their latest and greatest innovation project. And they would all in turn, over time, hear one another's projects.
So given their unwillingness to share Minerva before that, do you think there was some underlying reason or even cultural issue which you've unearthed as you went through this, which really drove that sort of behaviour?
Well, there was not only the culture of silos, but also the fear of failure. Yeah. And it's, that fear of failure is very important. You don't want, your emergency response to fail. You don't want, the police department to fail. But what's critical is that in order to innovate, you have to be willing to, if not fail fast, fail small. So I encouraged prototyping, proofs of concept. If you were going to try a concept, you could isolate and manage that iteration so that it didn't impact a lot of people. And what they didn't realize, which I hope I promoted, was the idea that, in fact, experimentation was a form of risk management. So instead of launching, every street light in the city and doing it all in one big bang, that you could experiment with one small neighborhood at a time. And so this concept of failing small actually gave folks permission to try new things and manage the risk of change. And only with experimentation and failure can things get invented. If you think about the Wright brothers and that first plane, kind of just flopped over on its side, and that's okay because they were 2 feet off the ground and there was no passengers in it, right? Yeah. And so you can't let, the perfect be the enemy of the good, as the saying goes.
Many times when we're encouraged to do something, we tend to think about, what's in it for me if I go down this path? Were there ways that you really started to think about how you could make the CIOs think this was valuable to them?
Yes, well, I help to encourage better partnership between the CIOs and the commissioners, or in terms of the business side of things. And as long as they were really tightly aligned, so for example, we wanted to improve the computer science education in the schools or provide more free Wi-Fi. And those were, really political goals and the benefits of which is, hey, these guys are going to get reelected if they do something. And how were they going to be helped by these key technology initiatives and kind of pointing them back to the benefits of the people of New York. So we actually made sure that every technology initiative could demonstrate how they were going to make the lives of everyday New Yorkers better. So a great example would be we helped make the bus time commutes faster, 20% faster, by putting sensors in the traffic lights. So when it saw that there was a bus coming, it stayed green. So you save pollution, it's not idling, and actually your commute is faster because the buses aren't stopping at red lights the whole way.
Given some of your experiences as you went through these transformational changes at New York City, Minerva, do you think there were some lessons that could be learned from what you did, which in your observance of this country, Australia, that you think could be valuable here as well?
Sure, absolutely. I think that if you think about broadband as the new kind of utility like water or electricity, so you wouldn't charge more for electricity. It's something that everyone needs to survive. We feel the same way about broadband. And so the idea that you did not want to create a tech haves and tech have-nots was very important to the idea of creating a smart city that was also an equitable city. I think in Australia, you would have an issue if only wealthy people could afford super fast, broadband and high, high data, and so it's become so essential to everyday life that it would be very important to figure out a way, just like you provide clean water and electricity, how could you provide, low cost or free broadband to all Australians, and what would be the most effective way of doing that?
So really, we need to stop thinking about broadband as a service or a luxury, but really as the next big commodity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've observed that in other countries. Singapore was very early on, and we're going to be a digital city, and they invested a ton in their infrastructure. And the same with many other cities now all over the world. And so I think in order to remain competitive on a global basis, you have to have the infrastructure to do it. So in the same way that once, a long time ago, you had to make sure we had roads and bridges, now you have to make sure you have broadband.
What sort of advice would you give CIOs when they're trying to essentially manage upwards as well as downwards as they consider their digital transformation journey and strategy?
Yeah, I think that, if you underestimate how much your business is going to be disrupted by digital transformation, you're pretty much doomed to be disrupted.
Yep.
And what I think is really encouraging is that a lot of corporate boards are now understanding this, if only for cybersecurity reasons, that they need a technical person on the board. And so I'm on a lot of these searches to help, quote unquote, traditional, companies find someone who can sit on their board who's well versed enough in understanding what digital actually means. And those are the companies that will succeed and stay on to the next generation, because it's changing, and there's no avoiding it at this time.